Welcome to Football Never Sleeps, the aspiring to be viral, always caffeinated, newly relocated YouTube show all about Notre Dame football and the echoes that have been reawakened for the Notre Dame fans who are daydreaming about a national championship in 2025. I'm Eric Hansen, a little sleep deprived in South Bend, Indiana, but loving every minute of it. He's Tyler James, waiting for his NIL offers to roll in. Together, well, we're part of a new team at Blue and Gold and on 3. A little bit more about that later in the show. For now, we're going to talk about Notre Dame's recruiting hot streak, with possibly more to come later this week with 3 wide receivers making their decisions. We'll also talk about the current state of the wide receiver position group at Notre Dame. Your questions, comments, quips, maybe even bribes. We'll take them all. So start filling up the question portal. This is
Football Never Sleeps.
You made that introduction look easy, Eric. I struggled the 2 times I tried it when you were gone. I think one time I was too early and one time I was too late. So maybe the next time I try it, I'll be just right.
Well, I got coached up by Peter Chiavarelli. He had me as his guest at a Chicago concert recently, and I got to meet the band and everything, take my picture with them. It was really cool, and they got me ready to perform.
All right. Well, we are ready to perform for you all, and we appreciate everyone for tuning in. As always, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's important now more than ever because we will be changing the channel name. We will no longer be the Inside Indy Sports YouTube channel. Now that we're Blue and Gold staff members, we don't have the name change to share with you yet, but we'll get that here to you soon enough. And but as long as you make sure that you're subscribed now, you'll still be fed all of our content, and we'll be able to make sure that you don't miss any of the videos that you come.
Metaphorically, we're not going to come feed you.
Well, it's called a feed, so I figure that you're fed. So we always want to hear from you guys. Help us out by hitting the like button. We always love seeing the live viewers: Scott, Jeff, Joe, Irish fan, Eric, Brian. We appreciate you all chiming in already. That applies to everyone who's watching on replay as well. So make sure you hit that like button, comment. And make sure you're subscribed to us.
Smash the like button.
Smash it with respect, but smash it. And without further ado, let's get the show rolling, Eric.
Okay, well, our opening drive continues to be Notre Dame picking up verbal commitments. So since Tyler's last solo effort last week, Notre Dame has landed commitments from 4-star tight end Ian Premer in the 2026 class and 4-star linebacker Ellis McGaskin in the 2027 class. So, Tyler, what are the Irish getting in Ian Premer from Great Bend, Kansas?
Yeah, the 6'5", 225-pound tight end, somewhat surprisingly committed to Notre Dame last Thursday, not long after I told Eric he didn't have much to worry about while I was off for the day making a Costco run with my family. Notre Dame was seen a bit as the outsider, though a serious threat for the Kansas product, and he ended up picking Notre Dame over Kansas State, Kansas, and Iowa State. He's one of the top tight ends in the country by most everyone's appraisal. Rivals ranks him 9th at the position. On 3 ranks him 3rd. We'll see where he lands when those 2 rankings merge under the Rivals brand later this month. But I think it's safe to assume he should be a top 100 prospect. He's a very good athlete, has good size, and he's a good basketball player as well. So a lot to like there from Ian Premer, and a big get for offensive coordinator and tight ends coach Mike Denbrock.
So with 2 tight ends in the fold and Evan Jacobson not having made his commitment yet, a 3-star tight end, but really talented guy that's emphasized basketball early in his high school career. So what's the deal with Evan? Would they take Evan Jacobson if he wanted into the class?
Yes, Notre Dame would. That's what I've been told, though it seems very unlikely that he'd want to be the 3rd tight end in the class. In my opinion, Notre Dame feels like it's sort of invested so much in him and believes him enough that it would make room for him. But I think he's likely going to end up at Iowa State or Texas A&M. And there was actually a story today from On 3 Rivals Vice President of National College Football Recruiting Steve Wiltfong And that story indicated that it looks like he might end up at Iowa State or Texas A&M. So that's where I would anticipate him winding up. But yeah, if he decided, you know what, I'm willing to be the third tight end. I just love Notre Dame so much. I think Notre Dame would make it work, even though certainly the need for 3 tight ends isn't necessarily there.
Okay, and Steve Wiltfong has been a guest co-host on Football Never Sleeps. Maybe he'll come back when he doesn't have to coach a little league game for the first half hour of the show. But I think I can tempt him to do it with some Frankie's rib tips. Ellis McGaskin, what are the Irish getting in that 2027 linebacker? And is his nickname the Golden Child as well?
That's what he said. I have not talked to him about his alleged nickname. That's what he has written on, I believe, his Twitter account, is Golden Child. I have not received an explanation for that, but he's a 6'1", 200-pound linebacker from Mobile, Alabama, Williamson High School down there. He fell in love with Notre Dame on his one and only visit so far for the Irish Invasion and Grill and Chill earlier this month. He's a productive middle linebacker who plays with great anticipation and covers a lot of ground. He's aggressive. He can be a big hitter. I think there's a lot to like there from McGaskin. Rivals has him as a top 100 player in the 2027 class, so an excellent way to continue to get the ball rolling in the 2027 class for Notre Dame.
Okay, so we're going to switch back to 2026. Notre Dame's sitting at 22 commitments. They are number 3 in the it's new to us. This is our first day. On 3 industry rankings. They've been doing it without our help and our promotion. Now we're promoting the heck out of them. But they're number 3 in that. So let's go through the guys that are going to be making their decisions this week. And this guy is going to make a lot of friends of recruiting reporters around the globe announcing on July 4th. So Kaydon Finley, I guess it's just a few schools. Kaydon Finley, what's his potential impact on this class?
Yeah, Finley is, in my opinion, Notre Dame's top remaining target left in the class. He's the most important player out there that Notre Dame can add to its class. So Notre Dame, Texas battle. Texas is where his dad, Jermichael Finley, played college football before embarking on an NFL career. July 4th has become an increasingly popular day for commitments to be announced at the at the demise of the reporters who have to cover those announcements. But a lot of pre-work will be done so we can enjoy our holidays regardless of which school he chooses. My prediction is on Notre Dame. I think the Irish have really done a good job of recruiting him. They've made him a priority. He's a top 15 player at the wide receiver position per Rivals and on 3 out of Aledo High School there in Texas. So I think this could be the start of a wide receiver run for Notre Dame in July.
Okay, before we move on to the July 5th commitment with a much better date, where would you place the importance of Kaydon Finley in the entire class, since there's not a lot of targets left? You said of the remaining targets, let's put him in the context of the 22 guys they have already committed. Where would he stand in that pecking order?
I think you could still argue for 1 based on his position. I think receiver is the biggest position of need for Notre Dame in the class. He might not be the most talented, and I think a few guys could be up for debate in terms of who that may be. But I just think wide receiver is so clearly and obviously the biggest need in this class. So that, in my opinion, would make him the most important commit in the class if he ends up in the class as well.
Okay, and then we move to Devin Fitzgerald, a wide receiver from Arizona, whose father also had a NFL career and a pretty storied one at that. What are we thinking about Devin Fitzgerald's impact potentially?
Yeah, he's down to Notre Dame, Clemson, Stanford, and UCLA. My prediction again is on Notre Dame there. He's starting to get more praise from recruiting analysts from his work on the OT7 circuit. Rivals had him as a 4-star recruit. On 3 had him at 3 stars. I think probably more than anything, he brings size to the class that Notre Dame is sort of lacking. Notre Dame hasn't had a lot of luck with bigger receivers in this class, although they sort of have a history of being able to recruit bigger receivers, and speed has sort of been the bigger issue for Notre Dame. But I think Fitzgerald is someone who can go up and get the ball, who would be a boundary receiver for the Irish, and would be a nice addition after Notre Dame waited a bit to sort of figure out if it wanted to go ahead and pursue Fitzgerald, but it decided it'd seen enough, felt that the need was there for him to come on board. And we'll see if he picks Notre Dame on July 5th. He is a Phoenix Brophy Prep product, which is the same high school that Benjamin Morrison attended and freshman cornerback Cree Thomas attended.
Okay, and then on Sunday, we have a third wide receiver. He's one of the few recruits in this class that I've actually spoken with directly. Really enjoyed meeting him. I thought, man, I wish I could have been that mature when I was 17 or even 37 as Brayden Robinson. So what can you tell us about Brayden Robinson?
Yeah, Brayden's down to 3 schools, Notre Dame, Miami, and Arizona. I also have a Notre Dame prediction in for him. He, I think, is maybe the one I have the most questions about in terms of fit for Notre Dame. I feel like Notre Dame is, like I mentioned, they don't have a lot of size. I do feel like they're getting more sort of slot receivers. And are they going to have too many of them at some point? Brayden Robinson is that he's undersized, but he is a playmaker. Rivals has him as a 4-star, On3 has him as a 3-star. He's from Red Oak High School down in Texas. Someone that has been very high on Notre Dame since he made a visit back in January. And Notre Dame made the decision to continue to pursue him, host him for the official visit, and things continue to look like they're trending for Notre Dame. He had originally planned to announce his commitment date. I believe it was July 20th, and he moved it up to the 6th. It doesn't seem like a coincidence to me that Finley, Fitzgerald, and Robinson are back to back to back. Notre Dame has done that in the past where they go on sort of like recruiting runs where they have a number of guys commit in a short amount of time. I think this could be lining up for Notre Dame to get a wide receiver commitment per day over the weekend.
Okay, and then we get off the wide receiver bandwagon, get back on the defensive bandwagon or bangwagon with Nick Reddish next week on July 11th. So what do we think's going on with Nick Reddish?
Yeah, Nick Reddish is down to 4 schools: Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Indiana, and Wisconsin. When he makes that decision on July 11th, I do think it will be for Notre Dame. He's someone I predicted to end up at Notre Dame pretty early on this year. Someone that Notre Dame has been pretty adamant about wanting to add to its class and on top of, even though he's a 3-star recruit across the board. He dealt with an injury last season, so I think that has maybe influenced his ranking rating as well. But someone that Notre Dame likes and feels is a great candidate to be the 5th defensive back in the class who could play safety or nickel. He attends Charlotte Independence High School. Obviously, Notre Dame has had a lot of recruiting success in North Carolina in the class, and I think Nick Reddish will continue that.
And then finally, as we get into the last week in July 26th, Elijah Golden, a defensive tackle from Florida. What can you tell us about Elijah Golden, besides he is also the golden child? Golden children.
He's the one of these guys that I have not made a formal prediction on. I lean Notre Dame right now. I think it's a battle between Notre Dame and Alabama. Oklahoma and Virginia Tech are also his finalists. He's another player that Rivals and On3 have disagreed on, with Rivals having him as a 4-star recruit and On3 as a 3-star recruit. So I'll be curious to see where he ends up in the updated rankings. In terms of remaining targets importance, I think he's up there, not as high as Finley, but I think it has the argument to be the second most important because he's the top defensive tackle left. Notre Dame doesn't have a lot of other options left there. I think certainly if Notre Dame doesn't get Golden, it would need to offer more guys or maybe circle back on some others that it decided to not push for official visits this summer. But this is someone that Notre Dame has been recruiting for a long time. He's at Sarasota Cardinal Mooney and has some Notre Dame ties at his school. So I think Notre Dame feels pretty good about where they are with him, but may need to make sure they get to the finish line. July 26th seems like a long time away compared to some of these other guys. So we'll see what happens in the next few weeks. But I think Notre Dame's in a good spot right now.
Okay. Do we want to talk a little bit more recruiting before we take questions? We just have a little bit of. You want to take some questions first, and then we can wrap up recruiting?
Yeah, we can get into some of these questions. I think a few of them are recruiting related anyways. Joe Peters said Georgia and Bama haven't offered McGaskin any meaning in that. I don't know. I haven't spoken to folks that cover Georgia or Alabama or connected to those programs to have any insight into why they haven't offered him. I mean, maybe it would be a case that they felt they didn't feel strongly enough yet. I mean, when it comes to Georgia didn't offer Thomas Davis Jr. until recently. And so maybe just weren't quite sold on him yet. Maybe they didn't think he would also be making a decision this early in the process. I don't think Notre Dame expected him to end up in their class by the time July started when he visited last month, but he really fell in love with Notre Dame. So it'll be interesting to see if those schools do offer him, if that changes anything. Auburn is a school that he has some ties to. One of his teammates is committed there. He's visited there a number of times. I don't think Auburn's going to give up on a kid from Alabama, even though he's committed to Notre Dame. So I think there's a long way to go till the 2027 signing day. So this will certainly be a recruitment to watch and monitor. He's someone that's committing to Notre Dame from an area that doesn't traditionally produce Notre Dame players. And obviously we'll have a lot of Southern ties pulling him to try to stay in the region. So we'll see how that plays out moving forward. But I think it makes sense for Notre Dame to take his commitment now with the way he spoke about Notre Dame and the way he feels about the Irish, and continue to fight for him, especially since they believe he's such a good talent.
And while you're looking for the next question, let me just say hi to Rajon, because he sent me 2 really cool emails, and I will get back to you, Rajon. Thank you for the emails. Okay, to the question.
All right, Irish fans. So you're saying it could be a receiver palooza, and Eric is the official palooza designator. So I'll have to see what he thinks about that.
Yes, it is definitely would be a palooza if they got all 3 of those guys. So that would give them 5 receivers in this class, and then Marie from Atlanta couldn't ask me in the chat about why aren't they recruiting receivers? Because I know she's watching.
All right. Scott Fegan says, guys, can you rate by position group what is the strongest recruiting group this cycle he's saying if the 3 wide receivers commit?
I'll let you take that because I haven't really analyzed that.
All right.
I mean, the one thing I know is the defensive backs position. Tom Lemming said even without Reddish, it's one of the best defensive backs groups Notre Dame's ever had.
Yeah, I think I would probably put defensive back first. That collection of talent from Chaston Smith to Aiden Pouncey, Joey Bryant, Kari Adams, those are like no one. I don't know that many people have questions about them. I think there are maybe some questions about some of those receivers. So I would put the defensive backs 1. The offensive line class is so there's so many guys that I think it's hard to sort of figure out where to slate them. And I don't know that all of them are. I mean, I think Tyler Merrill is a Rivals 100 guy. I'm not sure that those other guys will end up in the Rivals 100. Grayson McHugh could. So those are. I think you're like at 2 really good players in the offensive line class with some very talented guys to go along with them. So I would probably put the wide receivers second, and then I would probably go defensive line third. You could go either way for me. I guess it depends on if you get Elijah Golden. If you don't get Golden, you're probably not going to put defensive line ahead of the receivers. But if you do get Golden and you have 3 4-star defensive line commits, 2 guys in Iwatade and Dunham who are potentially 5-star guys, I think those that would probably be how I would rank the top 3 position groups. What do you think, Eric?
I think I'm copying off of your paper.
All right. Something
Are there
simple.
any you're disappointed about? I think the tight end was kind of disappointing until Premer jumped in there.
Yeah, I would say Premer changed the outlook of the tight end group for sure. Even if it was Frizzell and Jacobson, I still felt like that was a little bit more of both of those guys being projects, whereas Premer I feel like is more like I feel confident that he's going to be a good college player, whereas the other two. So that makes the tight end group better. Looking at the other groups, I mean, linebacker is thin when they only have two guys. I like Thomas Davis Jr., Jacoby Clapper's a little harder to get a sense for what he can be. So, I mean, Notre Dame's recruited linebackers so well that it's not like it's dying for linebacker recruits, but it hasn't. I mean, for instance, the last 4 recruiting cycles, they've signed Rivals 100 linebackers. I'm not sure that will at least one in each class and only one in each class. But I'm not sure that Davis will end up being a Rivals 100 player. We'll see. Maybe I'll be proven wrong there. And I don't think Clapper will be either. So the linebacker recruiting took a step down a little bit, but I think Ellis McGaskin sort of continues that in the 2027 class. So I'd probably say a linebacker maybe is a little bit disappointing. But, I mean, we're talking about Notre Dame recruiting at a very high level, so it's not like we're talking about scrubs here. Something Simple said, can either of you give any insight as to why Notre Dame never offered 2026 quarterback Dia Bell, who is currently committed to Texas? From what I have seen, Dia can spin it.
I'll let you take that.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame hosted him a couple times, had him throw for the Notre Dame staff. I think Notre Dame just I don't have like they didn't like X about him. I don't have that details. I usually don't go into that. Notre Dame identified Noah Grubbs as someone it really liked and pushed for him. Brady Hart was another guy that Notre Dame was really pushing for in the cycle. Hart eventually reclassified, and I believe it will be a freshman at Texas A&M. He committed to Michigan at one point, and then I believe he's at A&M now. So I think Notre Dame just liked other guys better. I mean, it wasn't that Notre Dame was unfamiliar with Dia Bell. It just decided not to follow through with an offer there. I'm not exactly sure what part of his game it didn't like, but I don't think it was for a lack of looking into him or giving him a shot.
A follow-up on that, what do you think of Noah Grubbs now that he's been committed for a while? Do you think Notre Dame ended up with somebody that they needed in that class? I mean, the caliber of quarterback.
I'm curious to see. I think I have not necessarily seen him continue to elevate his game in the way that you would necessarily want to see. Now, I think he could go out as a senior and prove a lot of us wrong that are like, wait a minute, how good is Noah Grubbs? I think he's still a good quarterback. I think it was important when Notre Dame got him because Deuce Knight was committed, but I think there was a sense that Notre Dame might not be able to hold on to Deuce Knight. So I think having the 2026 quarterback situation out of the way was a good move by Notre Dame. We'll see if Notre Dame made the right choice. Gino Guidugli obviously liked him and decided to push for him. Has taken a different approach in the 2027 class with only finally now offering a couple guys in the class, and we'll see how that works out for Notre Dame and if they need to expand the board more there. But Grubbs particularly did not have a great spring game, which I don't know that I've ever talked about a high school's player's spring game before, so it feels like a weird thing to be analyzing and feeling maybe like, well, okay, are we over analyzing things if we're talking about a high school player's spring game? But he was not an Elite 11 finalist. That is sort of a bar that a lot of Notre Dame quarterback commits tend to cross, but that isn't necessarily a guarantee that those guys will end up being good college players either. So I think there's a little bit of question, more hesitation about Noah Grubbs, not necessarily second guessing on if Notre Dame should have taken him, but just, okay, how elite is he? Is he an elite guy, or is he maybe dropping off and maybe some other guys are passing him up right now? All right, let's see what else some of these say. Jeff Stevens says, why do you think Julius Jones Jr. is reluctant to visit ND as a recruit?
What do you think, Tyler?
I think he probably has a pretty good grasp on Notre Dame. I'm not sure. I'm pulling up at one of his recruiting profiles now. I don't know how often he has made college visits. I don't know if he's been visiting a bunch of other schools and not visiting Notre Dame. It looked like he visited Oregon in the spring, visited Florida, Florida State. He lives in Florida. Those are the only 3 visits that are on his rivals profile. So, it doesn't sound like he's a recruit that's been getting out a lot in terms of making recruiting visits. I'm pulling up his On3 profile. Yeah, he only has those 3 visits listed there. So he's got an LSU visit from not this past summer, but the summer before. So I don't think it's a Notre Dame thing. It seems like he's not hasn't dove into college visits yet, and is someone that I think has a connection to Notre Dame, obviously with his father. I think likes Notre Dame, has spoken highly about Notre Dame, and is paying attention to the Irish and what they're doing on the football field. So I would not be concerned about where Notre Dame is for him right now. I think it would be too early to be concerned about that.
Okay, Tyler, Julius Jones trivia. If you can name this, there will be a fabulous prize in it for you.
Oh,
where
boy.
was Julius Jones Sr. from? What was the town he was from?
Oh, I have no idea. I couldn't even tell you the state. So that's before my time covering Notre Dame. So
okay, that's all right.
That beats me. Fill us in.
Big Stone Gap, Virginia.
Virginia. All right, cool. Big Stone Gap. Well, he would maybe Julius Jones.
It's
Jr.
not a suburb of Richmond.
Maybe Julius Jones Jr. can be a big gap filler for Notre Dame and help them take a leap up. He was very big at he had a very good performance at the Under Armour Future 50, which is for the 2027 class recruits. The top guys in the country get invited to IMG Academy by Under Armour, and he fared really well in the 7-on-7 portion of that. So would be a very important, will be and is a very important target for Notre Dame in the 2027 class. All right. TD4ND says, is USC expected to lose several commitments before signing day?
What do you think, Tyler?
I would guess so. I mean, they have a lot, so it's hard to
30, don't they?
It's hard to hold on to that many. I'm not sure how many that. Yeah, but they have been in the 30 range. Let's see. Yeah, they're at 30 exactly, I believe. So we'll see. I mean, I think they're probably gonna. I mean, how USC plays this season could significantly impact the recruiting class, because I think folks might think Lincoln Riley's on the hot seat if USC struggles on the field. But yeah, I mean, they're being aggressive. I'm not too dissimilar to what Chad Bowden did at Notre Dame in terms of like, hey, let's get commitments and try to hold on to them. And Notre Dame lost some of those. I would expect USC to lose some as well. I think there's going to be plenty of schools that want some of the recruits in its class because they're talented, and they're not all of them are from California, though. California has been prioritized in USC's class. They do have a number of guys from different areas, and they've already lost commitments as a result of that. And I would imagine they'll probably lose some more. That's sort of a natural thing. I don't think that's necessarily specific to USC.
All right. Let me ask you this question, Tyler, and you probably haven't given a lot thought, but since today is the first day of rev share era in college sports, do you think we'll see fewer decommitments or more decommitments given the new financial structure and that you're dealing with agents and so forth?
I don't know. I don't think I mean, I'm not sure how much it changes the realities of what people are saying they're going to get.
Right. So the reason I put it in that context, Nicole Auerbach of NBC tweeted this out. It's theoretically no longer about who's going to pay the most money. It's who's the smartest with their money. And I was curious if that structure, that way of thinking would change the way schools do it. For example, Marcus Freeman decided we're not going to push for commitments as early. You were sitting in there for that conversation as well. We're going to take our time a little bit and have a little bit different recruiting strategy. So I was just curious. I think it's probably too early to tell, but I appreciate you not defaulting to that.
Yeah, I just think the revenue sharing, like I don't think that we can, and I'm not sure that how much that's going to impact recruiting. Like that'll impact your NIL or like transfer portal retention and those kinds of things. I think more potentially, and those decisions because you're dealing with more college guys. Like I'm not sure.
Well, I would beg to differ. I've got a story ready tomorrow that will say something different. And talking to Dave Poloquin, who now works for Athletes First and is the GM of their college division, and just was at the OT7 7-on-7 tournament. So that it is a part of the recruits, it's a part of retention, it's a part of portal. Theoretically, all those things are going to be put together in that same thing, and agents are going to be able to deal with it. And Dave is one of those agents. He's also supervising a group of agents at Athletes First, which is a pretty reputable agency.
Yeah, I guess I'm skeptical that any sort of control over the recruiting dollars market is going to be enacted by what the revenue sharing it. I know there's a concept of now we're going to start following the rules, but I don't believe schools are going to follow the rules until they're given reason not to. And I don't know that anyone is proven the reason to not to make them follow the rules. So I think that's where my skepticism comes in, that I think there's still going to be collectives, whether front facing or in the shadows, that are
or at Costco.
Finding ways to give guys giant racks of Diet Cokes or dollar
hot dogs.
yeah. So
here's your rev share, $1 hot dog.
Yeah, I just think there's too much. I think trusting the system isn't something that I, as someone who's covered recruiting for this long, I don't know that I would fully buy into that until I've been given proof of concept.
Okay.
All right, we have one question about receivers, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, and then Scott Fegan asked about receiver recruiting. So I think we can go back to our outline, Eric.
Okay, so if Notre Dame adds all three of those receivers on July 4th through 6th, how would that compare to previous wide receiver classes?
Yeah, as far as I could tell, it would be the first time, if they make it to signing day with all five guys, it would be the first time the Rivals era that Notre Dame has signed 5 players listed as wide receivers in the same class.
And Rivals era started in 2002. So
correct.
Go ahead.
I mean, if you just look at last year's class, we're talking about a bunch of 3-star recruits, and 3 of them, and Elijah Burris, Jerome Bettis Jr., and Antavius Richardson. So to get a majority of 4-star recruits in this cycle, if you get 4 out of 5 that are 4-star recruits, that's a significant improvement. The last time Notre Dame signed 4 4-star recruits, according to Rivals, was in the 2023 class. That was Jaden Greathouse, Rico Flores Jr., Braylon James, and KK Smith. And Greathouse, Flores, and James were all in the Rivals 250. So I think that would probably, if Notre Dame gets these 5 guys, I think this becomes the best class since that class. I'm not sure if I guess it depends on, I mean, some of it's like, well, everyone sees Braylon James's name on there. It's like, well, he didn't turn out to do anything, at least yet in his college career. But at least at the time of them being recruits, I think this class would be maybe comparable to that class. Okay,
let's widen that out to the whole class. So if Marcus Freeman ends up landing all of the remaining targets, and there's only 5.5 really, if we count Evan Jacobson, right, as one of them. So where would this place that class among the Marcus Freeman classes? Where would it put it in comparison to the Brian Kelly classes?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, this would surpass the 2024 class for Freeman in terms of his best class. That class finished 9th on Rivals. actually the On3 industry ranking ranks the 2023 class slightly better. Their ranking, which I don't know enough about. I got to learn all the rankings and systems,
Yeah,
and
it's
then
a whole new math.
what the numbers mean. The 2023 class was 92,057 for its average rating. The 2024 was 91.95, and 2025 was 91.473. Currently, the 2026 class, without adding any other guys, is 92,659. So that is better. It's currently the number 3 in the On3 industry ranking, as we mentioned earlier. I think this class has the potential to be in the discussion with that 2013 class that Brian Kelly signed, which is sort of hard to do the math on too, because do you count Eddie Vanderdoes because he signed but didn't end up coming to Notre Dame? I think you sort of have to count him until this class enrolls, right? Like, because you can't guarantee that any of the guys that signed enroll at Notre Dame either. So that was Brian Kelly's best recruiting class by far. I think this one could be approaching that, and I think Notre Dame might not finish third in the class, in the rankings, but or third in the country in the rankings for its class. But I think that the top recruiting schools have sort of raised the level even more, where I feel like it's harder and harder to get into the top 5 because of how well some of these top schools are recruiting in terms of the 5-star talent that they're able to amass.
I did a little math the other day for a recruiting story that I did, and I went back to the start of the Rivals 250, which was 4 years into the Rivals era. So 2006 was their first one. Notre Dame right now has 15 Rivals 250 players. I realize we're now the Rivals 300, but this was before the changeover. It's very confusing from a math standpoint, but we're doing an apples to apples comparison. 15 right now. The most they've ever had is 16 in the 2008 class. So the 2013 class had 13. So they're ahead of that with chance to add more Rivals 250 players. I suppose guys could drop out of the top 250, but I think more inclined that maybe some of the guys that are outside of it, like Aiden Pouncey seems like a guy that would be a top 250 guy. It's hard to believe he's not in there, for example. But just in getting Finley, it would tie them at 16. What they don't have that the 13 class had, the 13 had a bunch of 5-stars in it.
Right.
And Notre Dame does not have a 5-star yet in this class, unless somebody moves up there or they get one. And I don't think any of their targets are going to end up as a 5-star.
Yeah, Notre Dame's current commits aren't 5-stars. It wouldn't surprise me. And I think Rodney Dunham has been a 5-star somewhere. Yeah. I'm not positive which site it has had him there. Joey O'Brien, I think, belongs in the conversation to be a 5-star recruit. Ian Premer, I know his On3 ranking is 24 overall. So by the end of the cycle, that would make him a 5-star recruit. So I think there's a chance Notre Dame some of his commitments could raise to the 5-star level. And I think that would be what would sort of be needed to push this class ahead of that class, in my opinion.
Okay. Let's see if I have one more question for you. Why is Notre Dame having so much recruiting success on the trail this year, Tyler?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. Certainly, it cannot be discounted. Like, Notre Dame has proof of concept with what happened last season on the football field. The playoff run means a lot to guys. Notre Dame has been selling. That is a place you can be a champion on and off the field. It could play for national championships and get an elite education. And I think Marcus Freeman, with what he's doing with the program, has people believing that is more realistic now than it has been in quite some time. Marcus Freeman himself is someone that kids want to play for. He's very active as a recruiter. The assistant coaches are developing well. And I think that's paying off. Just look at Mike Mickens. Like, I think it's not a coincidence that Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart are draft picks. Leonard Moore becomes one of the best cornerbacks in college football as a freshman. And now he's getting sort of whatever defensive back recruit he wants, seemingly. So that helps. Notre Dame has done a good job of setting up its NIL situation and its revenue share situation and making sure it has a clear message there. They're finding guys that want what Indy has to offer, just not just on the field, but off the field as well. I think some people, a topic of conversation when it comes to recruiting is like, can Notre Dame compete at the top level without sort of loosening its academic standards? I don't get the sense that Notre Dame has done that. I think Notre Dame is recruiting at a high level while not running away from the academic strengths of its school. That's something that Marcus Freeman leans into when kids are on visits. When you talk to recruits after they make a visit, they talk about Marcus Freeman is big on life after football and what you can do with a Notre Dame degree. And that is something that is still a major part of the pitch for Notre Dame recruits and their parents. I know folks want to make everything about NIL and dollars these days, but I don't think it's simply about that, because the Notre Dame degree is worth many dollars as well. So I think that you can't sort of discount that.
Okay, I'm done with recruiting questions unless you got some for me.
All right, I don't think so, and I don't think I see any in the queue either. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time. I know I don't love talking about ourselves all the time, but I know it's an interesting time for us with us making the move to blue and gold. Today, July 1st, is our first day as members of the blue and gold staff. We're fired up, certainly, to join the current staff that was there and make a bigger and better team and continue to produce first-rate Notre Dame coverage, which hopefully you've come to expect from Eric and I, but I think you can expect from our new teammates as well. If you weren't subscribed to us over at Inside Indy Sports, we encourage you to consider a subscription to blueandgold.com. You can sign up for $1 for the first week of an annual subscription, or you can subscribe for $11.99 per month. I'll drop a link in the chat here shortly that folks can click or put in their search bar to sign up. Eric and I are happy to answer any questions you may have about the move. We have been spending a lot of time interacting with the subscribers on the Loose Emoji board over at blueandgold.com. We still have plenty of conversations to have about content moving forward and who's going to be doing what and how, but I think you can expect to see a lot of the same stuff from us, and hopefully an even deeper focus on those things with more teammates around us. As for our YouTube stuff, Football Never Sleeps, the rest of our YouTube content, though some of it may change a little, we'll still be bringing that to you from this channel. As I mentioned earlier, we plan to change the channel name, but this is the YouTube channel where you will primarily find the YouTube content from us. When we decide on what that name change will be, we'll let you guys know what that is. If you're subscribed to us now,
if you have suggestions, send them our way.
Yeah, if you have suggestions, we're open to them. Blue and Gold does a lot of good YouTube content as well, and we'll work on getting some of them over on our channel for some videos, and we'll make appearances over there as well. So that's sort of the basic explainer I wanted to give for folks who have not come across what's going on or have some questions. Feel free to ask us questions here today. But Eric, how are you feeling about the move?
I feel like I'm drinking out of a fire hose, and it's the best tasting water I've ever had. So I am enjoying. I'm really excited and energized by this. I have had a couple of opportunities to go to blue and gold earlier in my career, and to be there now, it's just, the timing is perfect, and I'm really excited about On3. Once I figure out the 27-step thing, how to post a story without looking at the tutorial, I'm going to be golden.
Yeah, we're slowly chugging along to figure out how to do everything that the rest of our staff is already very familiar with. So we'll have to figure that out. TDA4ND said blue with Lou for the blue. For blue and gold, that one's not bad. Coffees for Closer asked, is a new jingle coming? I don't think so, unless Eric's got something up his sleeve. So there's no lyrics that say the name of our site besides Football Never Sleep. So I don't think
I don't know, but
the jingle.
But the guy that wrote that, his name is Piano Man Steve Lundgren, and he actually is moving to Nashville this summer to become a full-time songwriter down there. And so I keep in contact with Steve. I'm actually sending him a package of some goodies. So maybe he'll write us one for the Bob Morton Into the End Zone show. Bob Morton, he's big and has red hair, and he can squash Eric.
You don't want to mess with him, but he's the nicest person you'll meet.
So.
Scott Fegan says blue, gold, and bone crusher. He's really playing at Eric's heartstrings there.
Love that. Are you kidding me?
Everyone wants bone crusher content. That's good. But like I said, we're thrilled to be over at Blue and Gold. A new era for us, but you can expect to see Football Never Sleeps on a weekly basis like you have been. We love doing this, and the feedback has been great so far. So we appreciate that. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about wide receiver expectations. We talk about wide receiver recruiting, but I want to talk a little bit about wide receiver for wide receivers on the team this coming season. And interesting enough, Brian Habermill had that in his mind too. He left us a question before the show started. Most likely to be the team's leading receiver: Fields, Greathouse, Faison, Raridan, or other. And we will get into that here shortly because that's actually part of the conversation we had planned out. So first, Eric, I wanted to touch on a couple of things that you heard when doing some digging about the summer workouts for Malachi Fields and Will Pauling. How does that impact your expectations for Notre Dame's wide receivers group?
Notre Dame was really very, very interested in getting Malachi Fields, a guy that played on a team that didn't have a lot of offense. And yet Notre Dame saw him in person, had to scout for him and prepare and defend him. And he did decently against Notre Dame in their otherwise blowout win over Virginia. But he being here in person, and again, he didn't get here until June because he had academics to finish up at Virginia. I talked to a source that said he has a chance to have a Michael Floyd skill set and Michael Floyd impact. Now, the second part of that is less obvious than the Michael Floyd skill set. He has that skill set. Can they get him to that point? Because it's not just about your physical skills. It's about confidence. It's about playing with a first-year quarterback. There's a lot of things, but I think Malachi Fields could really be a difficult thing for defensive coordinators to deal with. I did talk to Leonard Moore about this for a story I'm doing later in the month. And Leonard Moore, Notre Dame's first-team All-America preseason Walter Camp All-American, said he's a handful. He said, I can play perfect defense, deep position defense of him. And he goes, I'm a long guy. I'm tall. I'm 6'2". I've got long arms. Malachi's 6'5", and he's just so strong and so tall and has such a leap that it's a very difficult cover even for Leonard Moore. So that's kind of a really good endorsement. Will Pauling, a healthy version of him is looking like the 2023 version of Will Pauling, who had big numbers at Wisconsin without the drops. Will Pauling in the quasi-injured version of him in 2024 was not as productive, had some drop issues. We didn't get to see tons of Will Pauling in the spring because he wasn't full go for most of it. Again, kind of finishing up an injury rehab, but still participating. It sounds like they're going to play him in the slot and also on the outside at a field receiver. They're going to find ways to get him outside too. If Notre Dame could say, wow, Pauling is going to be a surprise, Malachi Fields is a surprise. If they could say that about Jordan Faison or one of the field receivers, then I'd say, wow, look out for Notre Dame's passing game. I really want to revisit this conversation a couple weeks into spring or into fall camp, training camp, because I do think Notre Dame has a chance to take a good step up with its passing game. And they need to, because they don't have a running quarterback that's as prolific as Riley Leonard to unload the box.
Yeah, Fields was someone that Notre Dame was obviously high on in terms of pursuing the transfer portal market. Came here with high expectations, but we just didn't see him at all because he wasn't enrolled at Notre Dame. So it's nice to hear that that is the expectations remain the same. And he's very, to put him in the same category as Michael Floyd, that is some good company to be in terms of a receiver at Notre Dame. Pauling has been more of the dark horse from my perspective. I'm curious to see. You mentioned he could play a slot or to the field. How does he fit in with Faison and Greathouse? Is someone the odd man out of that top three? You assume it'll be Fields, and then how do you rotate Faison, Greathouse, and Pauling, or can Notre Dame make all four of those guys work? I think that's the more the merrier. I think from Notre Dame's perspective, like it has not had the luxury to have wide receiver depth and guys that you can count on, and so to hear that about those guys, I think is very encouraging.
The quote I got about Pauling is he's just different, and that is in a good way. So I'll take it and run with it for now.
All right. So I named who I think are probably the top four receivers. Now, maybe you disagree. How deep of a rotation do you think Notre Dame can have at wide receiver?
I think it's difficult to get more than 6 guys meaningful reps in a competitive game. I think it's difficult on the quarterback that's practicing with them. I think it's difficult for them to stay in a rhythm. I think there's certainly candidates where you can get past those 6 and maybe you work those guys in later in the game and, keep them occupied and developing and so forth. But for me, it's 6. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense to me. I'm not sure what that looks like in terms of who, like beyond those 4. I think in my opinion, there's probably 4 I think are the next 4. And that's Micah Gilbert, Logan Saldate, KK Smith, and Elijah Burris. The way I listed them is probably the order that I feel the most confident about them in. I don't know if that sentence made sense, but I just think that those are the young guys that I'm interested in seeing step up, but I'm not sure if they will. Is there a young receiver that you think is most likely to make an impact for Notre Dame this season?
I think if we're just talking about sophomores and freshmen, I'm kind of kicking KK Smith out because he's a junior.
Okay, sure.
I'll go with Micah Gilbert and Burris. But the one guy you didn't name that I'm not going to write off is Cam Williams. He hasn't shown that yet. But when you talk to Mike Denbrock about him, the offensive coordinator, he says, boy, he has the God-given ability to be a difference maker. He's an intelligent kid. He's a hardworking kid. He was not a highly developed kid in high school. He was perfect for the 7-on-7 circuit, not necessarily perfect for all the nuances of 11-on-11 football and all the reads that you have to make. But he's a smart guy, and he's got the physical skill, so I would not count out Cam Williams. He's my wild card of the young guys.
All right, yeah, I think, to me, Gilbert and Burris are the 2 guys that are the most likely. I would still give the nod to Gilbert. I was expecting him to have a big spring before his hand injury, and I think as long as he can get back healthy and that's not a lingering issue, I still think there's a bright future ahead for him. But Elijah Burris did flash at moments in the spring, and he was a guy that some of the defensive backs who were veteran or young spoke highly about in terms of a young guy that sort of has it, and it may take a little bit of time, but there's a glimmer of what he can be in the future. All right, I wanted to make us attempt to predict the top 5 receivers, both in terms of catches this season and receiving yards. I don't know if your lists are different or not, so it might not be two different lists necessarily, but I'm curious to see. Let's go with catches first. What does your list look like, Eric?
Going from number 1, I'm going to go with Malachi Fields, and then I went with Jaden Greathouse second, and then it got muddy for me. I struggle between Faison and Pauling. I think they're going to be 3-4, but the order could flip. And then I kind of went with a little bit of surprise at 5 with Elijah Burris. I kind of took a daring jump at Elijah Burris just because he does have really good speed and he works so hard in the spring to get up to speed and to impress the coaches. And he's just such a hard worker that I'm really curious to see what he looks like the first week of training camp.
Yeah, I had a similar list. I think to me too. It's Fields and Greathouse 1 and 2, and then Pauling and Faison. How do you order them? I put Pauling ahead of Faison, and then I went with Gilbert for 5th, the other young guy that we're high on. I'm not totally confident in who that 5th person will be. I think there's a clear 4, and there could be tweaks to that order for sure. I mean, I feel the most confident about Fields at 1. If Greathouse became number 1, would that be hugely surprising? No, not necessarily. I just think that there's such high expectations for Fields, and I think he can do some things that I'm not sure that any of Notre Dame's other receivers can do. So I think he would be a guy that, as a quarterback, you'd feel very confident in throwing in the football. All right, now how does your wide receiver ranking in terms of receiving yards list look? Is it how different is it?
Not very different. I put a different guy at number 5 just to make it different, and I put Micah Gilbert. The only reason why I was more hesitant to put Gilbert in either top 5 is because I think Malachi Fields is going to play the most reps of anybody. We saw that kind of with Bo Collins at the boundary receiver last year, and I think I like Bo Collins, but I think Malachi Field is a big step up from him, and I think he's just going to be on the field more than any other wide receiver.
All right, yeah, my list is the same. I came up with this prompt and then came up with the exactly same list. I considered maybe putting Pauling ahead of Greathouse, but I just think there's so much potential there for Greathouse that I don't know that I want to feel that confident about it going the other way around. I do think I'm curious, like, who's better after the catch? I mean, Greathouse had some big moments after the catch for Notre Dame. I think Pauling is more suited for that physically to make a difference after the catch than Greathouse. Whereas Greathouse is a guy that probably will be better in terms of like 50-50 balls, contested targets, like being able to go up and make a catch. I think he's probably better there. So how does that work out in terms of yardage? It could depend on how the quarterback is playing. Can he throw deep and throw some jump balls to Greathouse, or is he relying on underneath stuff to Will Pauling and letting Will Pauling make some plays after the catch? All right, I got a couple more questions here, Eric. Rajon says, are some of the answers at quarterback and wide receiver being figured out some in summer and workouts?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to want to see that when the coaches are around full time in August. Starting July 31st is actually the first practice of training camp, but in August. But yeah, a lot goes on in the summer, especially with those player-only workouts. You get timing and chemistry, and again, there's suddenly a healthy Will Pauling. There's suddenly Malachi Fields is on campus, and there are guys that over the summer have transformative summers and become different players than they were in the spring, and Elijah Burris could be one of those guys. So yeah, some of it could be worked out, but then they're going to have to prove it all over again in training camp when the bright lights are on.
Yeah, I think that's part of what summer is for. But yeah, the retention that you can prove in terms of the coaching and how you're taking that's what gets proven in the fall. And that's what coaches need to see and will have the most trust in terms of, okay, how well do you understand what we're asking of you? How much can I rely on you in terms of doing what I'm asking you to do? And that can make a big difference in terms of the trust that the coaching staff has in players. Jeff Stevens says, do you guys anticipate any access to practice in August?
We actually know what our schedule is. I think we have one full practice and some partials, and they're all kind of stacked toward the beginning. They want that Miami game to be as much of a blind date as it can be. And So we will have some access, but it'll be early in the process and not very complete. A lot of stretching and position drills.
Yeah, it looks like at least what we were given previously, there's 5 different practices where we'd have early access to the first few periods of practice. And then, 1 full practice. And this would all be, I think, before, like the 2 weeks leading up to the game, we won't have any access to practice unless there's a change to that. So, so the latest developments, they're not interested in showing us, which is understandable. I mean, that's sort of how it goes these days. But hopefully that is made up for and should be made up for by good access to players and coaches.
I think there's probably better chance that they'll serve lobster tails in the press box than they will add a open practice for us.
All right. Scat Fegan says, how many passes do we expect Notre Dame to throw? I'm thinking of a 60 to 40% run pass differential. Also, I'm sure it depends on the opponent. I would guess Notre Dame will throw about 25 to 30 times a game.
Yeah, I'm not good at the averages, Scott, because it is opponent specific and it's also flow of the game specific. And you have Jeremiah Love as your number 1 running back and all these other great running backs, and you have an offensive line that's going to allow you to do so many things. I would imagine it's going to evolve over the year. What teams are going to do right out of the gate is load the box and say, CJ Carr or Kenny Minchie, what do you got? And so once Notre Dame is able to solve that, how quickly they're able to solve that will determine that run pass ratio too. Once teams say, well, we can't do that, they can beat us with a pass. They can make that hurt more than their running game or as much as their running game. Then that changes the ratio. So I think it's kind of an evolving number, but in very general terms, Tyler, probably I'm stalling so that you can give an exact number, Tyler. So I'm expecting that out of you. I think you'll see more passes because you don't have Riley Leonard as your quarterback, and you'll have most likely CJ Carr, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't have. I pulled up like the season stats, and I don't even know. Like, I don't know that they show you runs per game or passes per game in there. Like, they'll have the season, so I'd have to get out a calculator and figure out.
You would have to get out of the calculator. I was stalling for that.
So I didn't do that. And then obviously you don't know, like when you're just looking at the box score, that's not telling you how many dropbacks turned into running plays because of sacks or
plays that were changed at the line of scrimmage.
Sure. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I couldn't give you a good number. I do think Notre Dame will be a run first team, but with the ability to stretch the field and throw it when it wants to. And I think that's the ideal place to be in college football right now. There's just too much talent in Notre Dame's running back room to not rely on that. I think the offensive line is good at run blocking and will allow for that success to continue there. But yeah, Notre Dame's going to challenge defenses that believe it can't throw on them. And I think maybe do that better than it did last year in terms of passing the football. I think the one thing you could question is like, well, one thing that Riley Leonard really made a difference on was 3rd and short and 4th and short. Like, you knew that you could just give it to Riley Leonard and he's going to pick those up. Well, will Notre Dame be able to do that this coming season as well? Or will it need to? It might not need to if its offense improves at a rate that it's not putting itself in positions to rely on short yardage on 3rd and 4th down. So it'll be interesting to see how the offensive play calling lines up with Notre Dame's strengths. I still believe its utmost strength is the running game, but it wants to get to a point where it can throw the ball with authority, and we'll see if a first-year starter at quarterback can do that for Notre Dame.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the third and shorts may be a slant to Malachi Fields. See if they can stop that.
Rajon said the last trip to Miami was a disaster, although it wasn't. The last trip against Miami to Miami was a disaster. Will head coach Marcus Freeman have this team ready for that atmosphere? What do you think?
Well, I mean, he had them ready for the Texas A&M atmosphere. I think that they've done a pretty good job of being able to deal with the atmosphere. So I think Miami's going to be a difficult team, even if it was an empty stadium and we're playing the COVID era. But I do think Marcus Freeman seems to have a pretty good handle on that, and not that it'll be easy, but that would be my thought on it.
Yeah, I don't have concerns about Marcus Freeman being able to prepare a game for a big moment, prepare a team for a big moment. So that's not a concern for me. Notre Dame has played in loud stadiums before, and that's not a concern. I think, as we've seen the last few years, the bigger concern is how does Notre Dame show up when maybe its best isn't required to win, and that it will be a thing that Notre Dame will continue to be challenged about, and Marcus Freeman has figured out in terms of righting the ship last season after the Northern Illinois loss. But in terms of being prepared for the moment, the atmosphere at Miami, I'm not concerned about that. All right, Eric, that's all we have for tonight. We really appreciate everyone tuning in to the first Football Never Sleeps with us as members of Blue and Gold Illustrated. Make sure you are subscribed to us here on the YouTube channel. Keep an eye out for the name change to be coming soon. If you have suggestions, like Eric mentioned earlier, feel free to send them our way.
Hey, we had a listener come up with our podcast name when we were at the South Bend Tribune, and it was awesome. So I have faith in you guys.
Yeah, if you guys got good ideas, and hey, we may be looking for a new podcast name too, because I'm not sure Inside ND Sports Podcast is what our podcast name will be either. So we're open to ideas. That might not be our strength. Even though we did come up with Football Never Sleeps, so we got at least one thing going our way. And I think Inside ND Sports is a pretty good name too. So we will try to come up with good names, but we will continue to give you good coverage. And make sure you are subscribed to us here. Go check us out at blueandgold.com, and everyone have a great week.
Thanks for being here.